We recently discussed horse costs during an in-the-chute discussion. Today, we share some statistics surrounding the horse industry and common frequently asked questions. Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I'm Calen. He is Brandon. I'm the smarts. He's the talent. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. You can find us at the social media handles below. Thank you for those returning. Today's topic is horses, ponies, hazatails, equine friends, four-legged critters that go neigh. We have been talking about cattle a lot, especially recently with upcoming cow and calf sales in the fall. But today, what we're going to discuss is actually a little bit different. That's the other part of the ranch business, which is horses. We've uploaded some videos recently of mare shopping, the foals, a lot of just stuff that's also our other half, our equine half. And so today I was racking my brain trying to think of some good things to discuss because I fell behind on the schedule. I was doing edits and I came up on obviously the horses. Let's switch from cows and go to horses. And I went to just horse industry talent and some uh career information, and it kind of came up. All of those searches directed me towards horse industry statistics. And again, a lot of S's. I'm struggling with the S's this morning. The highlights of those statistics are that the horse industry, believe it or not, contributes 122 billion with a B annually to the United States economy. The horse industry employs 1.74 million people. There are just over 7 million horses in the US. Texas currently has the highest horse population per state. 1.6 million households in the United States own horses, whether it's one horse or it's multiple. 60% of equestrians work in the managerial positions. That means, somebody's probably higher up in the food chain, so to speak, with a job so they can afford it, which makes sense. 50% of horse owners have an annual income of over $100,000. So you're looking six figures for their income, which makes sense as to why they could probably afford it. And then going to what we talked about last week, which is the average price or the average cost in general for horses. It says in the statistics that the average price of a riding horse, so you're probably thinking pleasure horse, a trail horse, something along that lines, is $3,444. The annual ownership cost of a recreational horse is $7,896. So just like we said in the shoot episode, there's a little bit of upfront cost, but there's so much more in the upkeep and the care of those horses. And there's a lot of FAQs, and I'll run through those once I give Dad some time to kind of say some things. But I'll make sure that there's a link below as well, so people can maybe reference this particular website. But with that, I'll turn it over to Dad.
So what year was the statistics on more horses in Texas than anywhere? Because it used to be Florida for a long, long time. A lot
Now,
of sport horses in Florida.
yeah, in Florida's, I think it said number 2 now.
Okay.
Because I was perusing through here earlier. There's a lot of stuff with costs, top 3, bottom 3 states
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I'm trying to go up here real quick. It's a pretty lengthy page. The No, here you go. So this article was written in 2022, and it's I
Okay.
mean, we're filming in October. It was about 10 months ago. It was released in late January. The article
Okay.
was, but the chart I'm looking at right now, it says that the Texas being the number one highest state with almost 800,000 horses, but it's got a decline since 2003. So over the last 20 years of 200,000. Percentage decline is 21%. And
Hmm.
then the interesting. It says the second highest is California. I was incorrect. The third highest being Florida. Florida, it's going so Texas 1, California 2, Florida 3
All three.
is 767,000, 534,000, and 387,000. So
So about 200,000, 150 to
yeah.
200,000 each time,
And
each
and
from
all of
state to
them, the
state.
percentage decline for all of them are hovering right around 22%. So
Okay. I mean, what you see in I'm sure California, Florida, Texas, there's all areas that they're used for agriculture. I mean, every state has, even Hawaii. I mean, there's some agriculture there, some horse use, but Alaska the same way. We've sold a number of horses that went to Alaska, not so much for the cattle industry, but more for pleasure,
mhm.
trail riding, that kind of stuff, or hunting.
I was gonna say hunting is probably another big one as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, for packing. But Florida, I think up in that Panhandle area, there's a fair number of cattle up in Florida as well, and some ranches there. Texas, obviously, and California the same way. But there's, I think because of the what we've talked about before, the ag industry is such a small portion of our overall population that the majority of these horses are used for pleasure or sport. And rodeo is a big deal. Texas, it's a big deal. California, it's a big deal. Florida, it's a big deal. So you're not generally herding cows for profit. Well,
Right.
do you herd cattle for profit anymore at all anyway? I mean, there's a question for you. But
Well, and
not
there was
surprised. I'm
something
not surprised.
there was something related to what you're saying right there, and I remember it. I did see it. I'm trying to find it. Oh, here you go. Activity, just like you're saying. Um, for farms, ranches, police work, rodeo, polo, etc. Something involving directly the movement of the horse for a certain purpose is only 8% of the use. They're saying recreational, and I'm assuming I'm gonna say probably trail riding,
Yeah.
jumping, stuff like that. That says 43%.
So
So
they make a distinction between recreational and sport.
it looks like it, yeah.
Maybe
Now,
so it's organized sport, probably
yeah,
then.
now keep in mind racing is all separate as well. They've got recreational, show, racing and
Mhm.
race horse breeding,
Okay.
work horses in farms, ranches, police, Amish institutionally owned, and then other, and
Hmm.
whatever other is, pets
Okay.
probably.
Yeah, it could
this
be.
this is
Yeah.
my pet, my big 4-legged 1,200-pound
Well, and
pet.
there's a number of people who like to save horses that are,
Yeah.
you're gonna be sent for slaughter or old stuff, and I mean they just got a big heart and they
Mhm.
just can't seem to let them go, and that's okay. I mean they can afford it, and it gives the horse a good life.
Why not?
It's none of my business. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
yeah, even most of the horses that we sell, they can be used for ranching, but the majority of them are for, I guess you would call it, for the recreational side of it. People want
mhm.
them to trail ride, to have. Sometimes they hunt with them, um, which I don't know where that would fall in, more the sport or the recreation. I'm not sure. See, there's the
I would
problem. I don't know where
I
that
would
goes.
assume probably recreation to me. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
I would
Eh,
think so too, because you can do that alone. It isn't
right.
necessarily an organized sport. So I would say that probably as well, not knowing. I mean, that just logically to me is where that would land. But um, yeah, you know, the majority of our horses are sold just for that, and so and that's the same I think with everybody. There are some people who raise specifically for a specific sport. Say, they're doing just rodeo, and some of these horses aren't trained. They're,
Like bucking
livestock for
horses.
bucking horses. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got some rough stock stuff. Um, others are strictly reiners. They're falling
Mm,
into a specific, very specific genre of a sport. And so polo's the same way. There's some pretty expensive polo ponies out there that people are raising, training, and that's what they do. I mean, that's what their passion is.
yeah.
So
And
we
that's
we do
interesting
something
too.
that's more of a using horse.
You're reining because you're the using horse, like you said, it would go in farms and ranches. Completely understand. Even police work because you can
Hmm.
alter some things a little bit differently here and there, but it's the same principle.
Right.
Uh, rodeo, I would imagine they're probably thinking like pickup men, right? They might be counting the bucking horses. I'm not sure. But like you're saying, the reining, I could see reining fitting in 3 different categories here.
Right.
I could see show horses, I could see the work horses, or I could see the other. Um,
Well, you do
Probably
it
show horses or work
recreational.
horses, but
Well, you can do recreational with it too. I mean, people like
yeah,
to do that. The show certainly, but it could also be the sport horse because it is a sport horse too.
yeah,
So I mean, it could follow in any of those different types of activity. I guess is a better broad word to say.
right.
So and I can tell you, some of these ponies, polo ponies, can be pretty expensive. Cutting horses, pretty expensive, and you got a horse that's winning $1 million, $2 million, in a futurity. It's kind of like the racehorse industry. The more it wins, the more its value is for later on, and especially if you can breed it.
Right.
Young stallion or something. I mean, you're doing well as a business if you can capture that, and part of that's the training, part of that, the other half of that is the genetics of that horse. So
And
how
I
smart it
think
is,
to an
how athletic
extent,
it is.
it's also just luck.
Well, there is some luck of the draw there too. I mean, you get to choose, say for instance, on your cutting horses, you get to go in and you got a herd of cattle that you're going to work. And you get to pick your specific ones. You have to pick usually at least 2, no more than 3 cows to work, or yearlings, generally steers, heifers. I mean, it varies, but herds can be different. They can be
Hmm.
somewhat worked, they not worked. So there is a little bit of luck there about what you're facing. You still get to pick your animal, but um, you can only pick the best of what's in that herd for what you think is gonna respond well. And if you got some dud animals, that
Right.
that part of it is the unknown, or the luck part. But the training, the genetics, that's there's no luck involved really with that. Um that's very specific about skill, and they do well that way. You can have an animal that's not feeling good or
Right.
feeling really good. I mean, that can happen too. So everything lines up. So call that luck. I mean, or bad luck. You can do that as well. So,
Um,
and
Nick, go
polo
ahead.
ponies, I know nothing, really nothing about. Enough that I could talk to someone who does it and ask questions,
Yeah,
more than anything. I just know that
same.
there's some high dollar polo ponies. There's some training that obviously goes into that, and police work the same way. It's all about what you expose them to, and how
Right.
well and how long, and some of your methods to get them there.
Yeah. Uh, I promised FAQs, so I'll just review them because I said them in the intro, but I'll review them one more time because I looked at the bottom of the page and they're the exact same highlights that I already said. But the horse industry contributes to 122 billion, again,
Yeah.
billion with a B, to the U.S. economy, and that's where I want to head to next with that question. But the horse industry employs 1.74 million people. 7.25 million horses are living in the United States. Texas has currently the highest population per state, with California being 2 and Florida 3. We just discussed that. 1.6 million households in the U.S. own a horse. 60% of equestrians work in a managerial position. 50% of horse owners have an annual income of 6 figures, so 100,000 or more. The average price of riding horse is $3,444. And again, it's a little more costly to keep them with the upkeep. The annual ownership cost of a recreational horse is almost double that at $7,896. So to go to my first highlight, which the horse industry contributes $122 billion annually to the United States economy. I'm going to ask a controversial question here. What do you think, if we were to allow horse slaughter in the United States, how much more do you think that would increase the US economy?
I don't know. Probably, because it's really not about a product that you're doing something with. For instance, just like we talked about, are these reiners? Are they polo ponies? They could have been, but they're not contributing, or they're not part of that anymore. They're basically at the end of life.
Yeah.
So, they're now going to be utilized as food. So I don't know that would do a lot, except that, that money, if you're counting dollars, um, is being transacted somewhere between a seller and a buyer. Maybe some transport for it, but how that would be done, I don't know, because if you're looking at dog food, for instance,
Right.
or some of the other
Products.
types of products, are they counting that? Where do they stop counting that at?
Right.
I
No,
don't
it's
I
a
don't know.
but that's why I asked, because I see potentially looking at that same industry as something we have with the beef industry.
Mhm.
Just the horse flesh would not necessarily be going to human consumption. We as a
Right.
an American culture have such an issue with horse flesh that we wouldn't want to do that. But I could see where, like you said, we take that and we put that towards dog food or something, or cat food, something to that effect. And
Mhm.
then the bones could be used for fertilizer, like with
Mhm.
cattle, hooves for glues and gelatins and stuff like that. So that's really where I think it would probably, I don't know if significantly increase, but definitely increase
Yeah.
um in a recognizable way, because you're still gonna have things like with the beef industry. You're gonna have people in the, probably like the feedlots or the holding lots, because you can't really finish out a horse, I think. I'd have to ask somebody who finishes out horses, I guess. You have the trucking costs, you
Right.
still have auctioneers and places, you'd have slaughter plants, you have everybody that's receiving the goods, like the hooves, the bones for, like I said,
Right.
fertilizer, glues, gelatins, things like that. I would think that it would probably increase it, and not necessarily significant, but in a very sizable amount.
Well, and you have to have people working in those industries, so you're employing
Right.
people,
And
right?
that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying with the trucking and the
Right.
slaughter and all that stuff,
Right.
yeah,
I mean, look, it's happening anyway. It's just not happening here.
in the United
'Cause
States, right.
in the United States, these horses are going into Canada and the slaughter's being done there. So we're missing out on a viable industry
Mhm.
that could be done here easily, used to be done here, and all because, you know, somebody feels bad or we shouldn't be doing this. And, they got, I think they got their heart in the right place, but they're they're sticking their head in the sand if they're saying, well, it's not happening here, so it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and we've had discussions about this as well too, like some of the unaccounted for discounts of doing that, of, now
Mhm.
you have horses that are being released out onto the
Right. Unintended
interstates.
consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And things where, people disagree with it, but they're like, "Oh, don't, the wild horses," they're not wild, they're feral. But
Right.
the feral horses, like they're pulling them in, they round them up, and it's so inhumane. And it was like, well, they're trying to minimize the population for a reason. It's like hunting without hunting. And so that's what you've done, is you're trying to manage these populations, and then what you do is you have leftover, savor what is it, like, uh, I'm trying to get the right word here. Where you go out rescue. There you go, rescue horses, and some of them don't ever really get rescued. So what do you do with them? That's
Right.
something where they should probably go to slaughter, because they're not going to be useful as a pet or anything like that, and you're causing them
Well,
more costs and more issues in the long run.
yeah, if you have somebody who's got a piece of ground that they can buy a rescue horse from the BLM and put it on their property and they never do anything with it, they have saved this animal. I mean, they're still contributing because they're purchasing feed, probably some vet care. I mean, they're doing some basic things. They
Yeah,
may not be doing anything with them, but they're probably not eating any less than any other horse is, right?
yeah,
They're not taking any less shots if they're
yeah,
being cared for. Wormer, all of the things that go along with that. They may or may not be spending money on gas or diesel to or a horse trader to take them somewhere and go someplace and do something. But there's, it kind of it slows there, but it happens every year as long as they keep that horse. The one thing about the slaughter industry is um, that's an end of the line type uh, of cost, or if you put it in a way as an industry, that animal's coming through one time. They're not going to
yeah.
a sport,
Not multiple.
repetitively. They're
Yeah,
going through there one time, but it's a steady line of horses, because we're all aging as a
right.
mammal, well, as any living thing, we're only going to live so long. And so you're utilizing that. And you know what? They're making horses every year. We are too. So that is just something that occurs. And to me, it's a logical, good place to go, and with a good benefit for an animal that benefits all of us. Even the folks that, you know, we've got a industry right here locally where they take draw blood from these horses for uh, medical reasons, and they're getting blood platelets. They're getting
Mhm.
all of the things for hormones. I mean, really, it's a very, very good use of these horses. And you know what? Blood's a renewable resource as long as that is done the right way. You know, you're filling a vial just like you would if you go and donate blood
Right.
somewhere. And these horses have a pretty dang good life. Really, they not much is expected of them. They're fed, they're cared for. They have to be in order for them to have produce some blood from a healthy animal. So you know, there's that whole industry as well, and the benefits from that. Some of the people that may or may not like that still may or may not benefit from it. And I'll bet you they do benefit in some ways they don't
Mhm.
even know.
Right. Yeah, especially with that medical piece.
Right.
Uh, the s- you quickly we kind of talked about the employment part with the slaughter. It says the horse industry in that contribution to the U.S. economy, the total employment impact is 1.7 million jobs, a little over that. The direct employment with the horse industry is just under 1 million, so 988,000. So we're looking at about an 800,000 job difference, maybe $750,000 or 750,000 job difference. So 3/4 of a million jobs difference there between total and direct impact. That's where I think looking at that total impact, the slaughter industry could potentially bring that total impact or
Mm.
employment part up to closer to I would probably guess roughly 2 million jobs. Potentially.
Yeah.
I could see
Yeah.
it being that way because you got more people in like the food industry, more people in the
Right.
trucking, more people in the auctions, like I said, more people in the just overall
Well, it's
slaughter process, but
yeah, it's not just the slaughter process; it's the product after the
infrastructure.
fact too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that all of these things are going to go different directions, and it's not just one slaughter facility. You have several slaughter facilities, so that's spread around, and yeah, I mean that just snowballs and has a big effect in ways that you don't really understand, and to a depth you don't understand. And I can see the distinction between um, being involved in the equine or horse uh, as far as someone's selling um, a wares. Say they've got a store, and there's several of them here where you can buy clothes there, but you can also buy bits, spurs, a little bit of tack. And so there's a difference, I think, between someone who's selling tack or selling some of this stuff that goes to a horse and the person who's out there shoveling a stall a couple times a day for somebody.
Right.
That's you got indirect and direct that way. And so the indirect is going to be measured, I would think, a little bit differently because like how much of their time is spent selling that tack or how many dollars worth. And I'm sure it's measured in your probably your retail sales of whatever.
Right.
So I don't know that. I would just have to assume that as a kind of a logical way to look at it.
I'll ask what state do you think has the highest GDP share from horse industries?
Oh boy.
I'll
Well,
give you a hint. It's
I,
not one of the three we just discussed,
yeah,
with it being
I was
Texas,
assuming
Florida.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Oklahoma,
Oklahoma's too.
is it?
You're close. But
Yeah,
here's the kicker. Now, all right. Well, I'll tell you the number one is Kentucky.
horse
Makes
race.
sense,
Yeah,
right? Yep.
yeah,
Horse racing. So Kentucky, Oklahoma, the number three is Florida. So number three is
yeah.
Florida. Florida is three for both ownership in horses and then GDP contribution. But here's what surprises me is with how much money the horse industry, particularly in Kentucky, brings to the table. How much of the state GDP do you think it provides?
Oh, geez. That is when you think horse racing, you think of Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking just anything other than race horses, to be honest with you, because that's kind of not on my radar so much.
I'll tell you the state GDP in
20%.
2016 was $195 million.
Well, then it's probably not. Maybe 10%.
It's surprising to me as the number one highest state, it's only 1%.
Really?
Yeah. Oklahoma's 0.62%. Florida being the third highest is 0.25%.
Well, and I can see Florida because that's a tourism. You got Disney, you got all kinds of other stuff
That's
going
a
on
good
there
point.
as your
But being
GDP.
the first highest 1% and the third highest at, sorry, it was 0.26, not 25, but 26%, a quarter of a percent GDP. That's crazy.
Yeah, that I'm way off on that. I have no idea.
And it
But
doesn't show
I was
Montana.
thinking
I'd love to
because
know where Montana falls in this hierarchy, but it only shows
yeah,
top three and bottom three. But
probably pretty low because of we're sparsely, populated and
yeah,
but yeah, I guess I was thinking the size of the state of Kentucky is not very big
no,
and it's fairly rural in a lot of areas,
yeah,
so that's why I was thinking, it's a poor state. Kentucky's not a wealthy state.
no,
And
not
that's
at
why I
all.
thought with what they got going on there with the horse race industry and some of the high dollar stuff that maybe it was that high. But
Yeah.
wow, that's kind of surprising because those are arguably some high dollar horses too.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can. I've been in the Lexington area several times, and you just look out into the fields, and you realize you're like, how many millions of dollars of horse flesh is just out there in the fields right now?
Yeah,
And then how many
yeah,
millions are in the barn where they're going to be in a padded cell
right. Having a
with,
good life, or
yeah, with a velvet plush pillows for them to lay their little horsey heads on at night. Like, yeah, but no, I'll tell you the bottom three are New York, the is number 50, 49 at California, and 48 at Illinois or Illinois. And New York is 0.08% GDP.
yeah.
California and Illinois are at 0.11%.
Well, you got to look at it with GDP. New York, that's the business capital of the world, right?
Right.
So they
Yeah.
got a lot more other things going on there. And the population, very small state, high population, not agricultural, except for that northern end, the northern half of the state, which is a pittance and I'm sure mostly dairy type
Yeah, it
stuff
is.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And California, well, dairy and wine, but
And
California,
one.
the same thing. I was thinking about, I was like, it's the number, what was it, number two for horse ownership? Like, how is it the second lowest? And I was
Yeah.
thinking about, I was like, well, that makes sense though, because how much agriculture is there? And then also how much tech is in California. I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even though you've got a lot of horse ownership, the GDP resulting in that is probably just pleasure horses. So there's not a lot of
Well, and
actual industry surrounding it.
and it's also part of our fruit and vegetable production for the US. That and Florida's got a good share of that too. But there's a lot of ground there that's used up for lettuce, carrots, broccoli, tomatoes, you name it.
Right.
On that direction too. It's a big agricultural state, but it's not necessarily on par with animals. I mean, there's a ton of crops that are grown there.
Now, moving on to some employment parts, we already kind of talked about it with the slaughter, but the industry employs. It says total employment again 1.7 million jobs, with direct employment being just under a million at 988,000. And it says, and I'll quote the site I'm on right now. Interestingly enough, the horse industry directly employs more people than railroads, radio and television broadcasting, petroleum and coal product manufacturing, and tobacco product manufacturing. It says horse industry is number one with 988,000. Tobacco is 271,000 jobs. Radio and television is 248,000 jobs. Rail industry is 135,000 jobs. And petroleum and coal product manufacturing is 101,000 jobs. That's interesting to me because now I'm kind of wanting to wonder, like, ask, how are
What are they
you,
counting? Yeah.
yeah, how are you counting something being within this particular parameter or this particular industry? Because tobacco, to me, that makes sense. It's kind of a smaller industry and it
Yeah.
continues to dwindle every year. Rail, there's a lot of people in the rail industry, and product and coal product, or
Hmm.
petroleum and coal product manufacturing. Like, that there's a lot of miners out there doing a lot of stuff. I don't know how they
Yeah,
come up with that number, but
there's a lot of production in our refining, drilling, transport. I mean, unless they're now I got to suspect their numbers a little bit because are they, well, how are they calling that?
right.
And what are they saying is upstream, downstream? Are they not counting anybody that's drilling? as production, which it is, but or are they only counting like refineries and not counting anybody before it comes into it? I don't know. I mean, that's one thing you have to do, like Grandpa said, statistics are like a bikini.
Yeah.
What they reveal is interesting and what they conceal is vital. So,
Right.
it's all in what you choose on your parameters of what you want to get the word out there or bolster your argument.
Well, because that is suspect, I'm not even going to put a lot of focus on it, but we'll move on to the next one, which we briefly discussed a little, was the activity of horses. And that's resulting directly around their specific industry. So again, recreational horses or show horses, racing and race horse breeding, work horses, which had the plethora, again, the farms, ranches, police work, rodeo, polo, something to that effect, and then Amish, institutionally owned, and then other, whatever. I think it's just a miscellaneous like catch-all for whatever wasn't accounted for. Recreational horses comes in at 43% of all the horses in the U.S. Show horses and race horsing both come in at 17%, which race horsing, that makes sense to an extent. Show horses, I'm curious. Maybe somebody's not counting the recreational horse as a show horse or the show horse not as a recreational horse, because I see a lot of those
Both, yeah,
blurring the lines.
right. Well, they overlap.
Right, and again, workhorses are 8%. Amish institutionally owned is 2%. And then the miscellaneous other is 13%. So I just kind of the numbers that I threw there at you, kind of your thoughts.
Yeah, that's I can see the Amish. It's a very small, niche group that institutionally owned. I get that.
Yeah.
But the miscellaneous 13%, that's a high percentage for something that's like,
Yeah.
we got nowhere else for it to go. What
I
the
could
hell
see,
does that mean?
I would say less than 5%, understandable, because still a pretty big number, but you're looking at 13%. Everything else is 8, 17, 17, 43.
Yeah,
neglecting the Amish. They don't really count because they're such a minority and stuff like that.
Right.
8, 17, 17, 43, and then other is at 13.
Yeah, I don't quite get that either. Unless the other is they just own them in their pasture ornament.
And I guess that's possible. I don't know how many people. I'd love to know how many people actually have horses that they're like, yeah, they're just my pet. It's like my dog.
There's a good number of those.
And maybe that's what it is.
You take a look around, drive around sometime, and look at horses that are standing in a pasture that have not been ridden in years.
Fat and happy.
Yeah, I mean it happens.
Sounds like my horse.
Yeah, yeah, fat and happy is right. So yeah, I don't know. Those numbers are a little bit. Again, what does that mean? What do they call that? How does that get counted? And take a look at us. Do they count us as part of the cattle industry or part of the horse industry? It's not 100% both. It's we're both, and so
yeah, we would definitely fit in two. It'd be the work horses and the recreational horses, because we're in a sense we're providing recreational horses.
Yeah.
For sale, and then we use our horses for work horses. That's their their main intent, because it's the most well-rounded for the training we provide.
Right.
I would say a basic foundation for what we provide as a workhorse. However, it does turn into a recreational horse. Now,
well, we prep them for that too. Yeah.
Right. When I was a little kid, though, we could have fit in show horses too, because we were constantly going to shows to help market and display what the horses could do, and using the show horse arenas and events to show everybody else what they were capable of doing, what your training could provide, stuff like that. So we would have fallen into recreational, show horse, and work horses. So that's that's another thing too. And maybe that's what the other is, those who fit in multiple categories, which if that's the case, then you need to have a better layout.
Yeah, exactly. You got to explain this a little better to us so that we know. I don't know. Good question.
That's okay. That's why we're having these insightful conversations. Anyway, horse breeds throughout the United States, and these, I'm gonna go on a limb and I'm just gonna say registered. Because it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 breeds, and then an other category.
Yeah.
I'll say, what do you think is the number one horse breed in the United States?
Probably quarter horse.
Yeah, not even
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
The next one behind that, what do you think it is?
Yeah. Probably paint horses.
No, actually, it's not.
Really?
Mhm.
Thoroughbred?
Yep, there it is. Yep,
Yeah.
think Kentucky. So,
Yeah.
quarter horses coming in at 39.5%. So almost
Yeah.
40% of all
Yeah.
horses in the United States are quarter horses. That's not a
Yep.
shock to me at all.
No, not at
Uh,
all.
the now here's another question. I'd be interested to see how easy it is to get into certain uh registered breed programs. Is it easier to get into a quarter horse? Is it harder to get into a quarter horse? Is it easier to get into a paint? Is it harder to get into paint? Those are separate standards that might also have an impact in, uh, consequentially, but unintendedly for these breeds as well.
Well, the problem with it is, I think the quarter horse breed's official registry started in 1941.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Prior to that, if you had a horse that matched certain parameters of height, uh, weight, thickness,
Yep.
back length, all of these different parameters, you could send that in and your horse would be a foundation specimen. And this happens, I'm sure, in every breed, but there were guys that were registering stuff that was like, good God.
Yeah, 1940. I just checked it out.
1940. Okay. That is unbelievably that, and some people were, as a joke, registering their dog. They had a registered quarter horse dog,
Yeah.
so you get some people that do that. So that kind of doesn't mean a lot. Now, the one thing that may be a difference is you have something where you have a specific trait you're looking for, color.
Mm-hmm.
You get somebody who's a something paint horse, and there's always associations that are trying to do something where if they meet certain specs, kind of doesn't matter what the breed is, it's this color. Or,
Right.
or in our case, gated horses, you've got a number of organizations that are registering as a gated, but they have to, you got to show it. And now with film, the way that is so common, it's much, much harder, I think, to cheat that, where they have to submit a video of a horse doing something or, something along those lines when it's a performance type of an activity. So probably a little harder to cheat in a way, but I'm sure it could still be done. But to break into those now, they close the books. They have the books open to start a breed, and they take all of these things, all these animals, and they call them whatever they want to call them. The ego kicks in, and usually after somebody's name or something, and then they close the books. Then that's it. You can no longer submit anything, and now they breed within that pool, as the foundation pool. And some of these animals that were god awful, they've been kind of bred out or not bred, or
Right.
they weren't viable or whatever. But that's just the way that happens. I mean, you take a specific trait that you're looking for, and you try to breed for it, and you try to select for it as your registry. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's kind of the way it happens.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like you're talking about other breeds getting kind of pushed out. In this particular thing, again, 18% of breeds are unaccounted for. And
Yeah.
it just says other breeds.
Well, you take
But
a
yeah,
look at some of your BLM horses or your feral horses.
yeah, that's a good
Um,
point.
you know,
They're not really a breed. They're a mutt.
they are, and for those that think that they're a pure strain, that were brought in from Cortez, you
Yeah.
can see some traits there. Absolutely, you can see
And
traits, but you can also see some of
in
the
certain
draft
horses.
influence on
Yeah.
certain horses. Yeah, not on all of them. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
But you can also see some of the draft influence. People turning their horses loose when they left. I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Um, so they
And
are truly a mix.
and that's why somebody was telling me the other day, we had this conversation. I said, they're feral horses. They're not wild. They're like, well,
Right.
what are you talking about? Like, they're wild. Like, I was like, there's never a wild equine horse on North or South America until Cortez came by and the other conquistadors came and they released horses into the Americas.
Well, horses as we know it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
you're talking about prehistoric horses, but I'm
right,
talking about like the horses that yes, we now know and love and that Native Americans
right,
adopted and used as like a hunting and warfare tool,
right,
right? That was never around until the early to mid 1500s.
right.
And that's a blip on the radar in the North
Oh yeah,
American, North and
yeah,
South American histories. And they're trying to tell me this. I was like, no, I refuse to accept that as being a wild horse because it was released as a domestic horse and gone feral. They're like, well,
correct.
what about the ones that have been there for 400 years and have known life just as that? I was like, I'm
Still
still not going to
feral,
count that because there's been a lot of horses that first off, it did start as a domestic horse and then it went feral.
right?
Just because it was born and lived in that life does not make it wild. But also on top of that, horses have constantly been reintroduced into those herds because of, and you just said, like a great example being the depression where people couldn't afford horses, so they just released them. To this day, people can't release or they can't afford horses, so they'll release. Or worse yet, like maybe the horse just escapes and decides, oh, I see a herd running by and it jumps the fence, and suddenly you never see it again.
Well,
Things like
yeah,
that happen all the time.
and the introduction of horses, reintroduction of different breeds or types, happened while the mid 1800s, early 1800s to mid 1800s, when we started coming west, and a lot of Indian breeds or Indian tribes were stealing these horses.
Right.
You
That's a
know,
good
I
point
mean,
too.
you
Yeah.
got a lot of thoroughbred type influence, some of these horses from the cavalry. They were getting horses constantly stolen. Lewis and Clark expedition, look what they did. They dispersed some of these horses and got horses from the Shoshone. And then as they were coming down, some of these horses got stolen.
Right.
So they weren't just, isolated. They were used as breeding stock. If they were mares, geldings, it's not going to help much, but they were still captured or taken and influenced. And all you got to do is take one stallion, and how many mares can that animal breed? And some of the breeding programs of the Indians, Plains Indian, was just more horses that are better. The Nez Perce were the ones that were really some of the first to
Systematic.
have a systematic breeding program. Yeah,
Yeah.
and breed for
Uh,
different grades.
we'll run through the breeds real quick. About 82% is 81.9 is 39.5% being quarter horse, 10.2% thoroughbred, 7.8% Arabian, 5.9 Appaloosa, talking about your Nez Perce. 5.4 is a paint. 4.8 is draft horse. Our lovely Tennessee walking horse coming in at 4.8% as well. And then your standard bred at 3.5%, and then others making up the last 18.1%.
Yeah.
So we're part of the minority to an extent. But what's funny too is people will think of a really rail thin, gangly looking walking horse, and ours tend to look like quarter horses. So
right?
it's funny. It's funny that people see our horses and they're like, "Oh, that's a quarter horse." No, it's a walker because
Right.
it's been bred to look that way and to perform that way. So,
Right.
moving on, I'm trying to find some other information. Oh, here you go. We'll go to household care and holdings, I guess, of horses. It says 1.6 million households in the US own a horse, right? Horses
Doesn't mean
per
they care
owner.
for them. Doesn't
Right,
mean they
that's
care
true.
for them. They can be
That's true.
boarded.
Uh Horses per owner on average are six horses. And I thought that was interesting
Is that all at one
because,
time or throughout a lifetime?
well, that's a good question. That is a good, I don't know.
Because I know people that have had, 6, 8 horses, but one or two at a time.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that's a good question because I'm looking at some information right here. It doesn't differentiate. Uh, but yeah, I mean, technically speaking, I have two horses. I'm about to have a third potentially. I don't know if you count him as
Well,
a
it's
horse
only a
or
half
her.
horse.
Yeah, it's a half horse. him or her when it shows up. I don't know what
Yeah.
it'll be. Uh, horse owning households 1.6 million, total number of horses 7.2. So yeah, horse enthusiasts and spectators 38 million. That's an interesting number. I I don't know why you'd say enthusiasts and spectators, but
Well,
okay.
I can be an enthusiast of trains. I've never been on one, but like
Yeah.
twice in my life.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means. What
Um,
the relevance? How much money are you spending on that?
I don't know.
I
Maybe
don't
that's
know.
trying to relate to because I'll take that back. How many people are there in the United States? A little over 300 million, right?
Close to 400 million. Borders
Okay,
are
close.
open.
You can you can roughly you could roughly say half of all of the United States cares about 3 races a year. And
Right.
in that particular circumstance, if we're going to talk enthusiasts and spectators, we better jump that puppy up from 38 million to 200 million.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Whatever. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I
The,
think that again another kind of meaningless statistic there. That
mm,
is it really a statistic? I don't
well,
know.
the most common activities by horse owners, though, and here's some interesting ones. It says 20% involved as horse trainers. Okay, there's one for us. 17% give lessons. There's two for us. 19% are farm managers. There's three. 14% are breeders. There's four. 5% are veterinary activities.
We do our own, but
I
not
was gonna
not as a
say
profession, though.
kind of five.
No, I've
Also,
never been paid. I've never been paid for anything to do any kind of health care on a horse.
yeah, that's true.
Right. I think that's probably where that's going to.
5% are farrier activities.
Done that.
Technically also five.
Yeah.
And 23% are other. Examples given: boarding, equine assisted therapy. Again, we could potentially like this hits us on every single one. So I
Yeah.
want to know, where do we fit in? Probably it would be
I'm going to be
breeders
the
slash farm
spectator.
managers.
I just stand in the house and look
I'll
out the
watch the
window, watch them.
chaos unfold.
There you
Uh Activities of owners.
go.
Yeah, no, this I'm glad we have this conversation, but I'm starting to look more and more into this, and it's just like this is
Well,
suspect
but
in a lot of different
I
ways.
think that highlights something that is important, and that things can be overblown or underblown.
Yeah.
Um, and what's real? Why? What's the point of this article, or the statistics, or the source you cite? Who did it? Who
It's
put that together?
horsesonly.com, so I think it's horses only magazine. Yeah, horses only magazine.
Okay, so their slant is horses are important.
I don't know, because they're sure making it not sound important on some of this stuff.
Well, but only
Uh,
because we're pointing out, if you're going to do science, I'm a science guy,
yeah.
data and correct collection of data is very important.
Yeah, I'd
You can
love to know
skew.
standard variation or
Right.
the variance and standard deviation on these things, but yeah.
Well, what is your pool? Who are you looking at? What statistics are you garnering all
Well,
your money for,
supposedly
your
the American
information from?
population, but
Okay, I was never contacted for this that I know
yeah.
of.
Well, I would
You know what I'm
assume,
saying?
I would hopefully assume that they use census material, but who knows?
That's what I'm guessing. Tax records that from every
Yeah,
state. I mean, but to do that, that's a daunting task
it's a
to put something
project.
like that.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Now it
Uh,
says for owners though, the gender is 92.6% female. I could
mhm,
completely believe that.
absolutely. No. Yeah, that is well within the realm, especially the pleasure stuff and the show
Uh
stuff.
we already talked about employment, probably 60% managerial or higher, stuff like that. Uh Marital status, 52% married.
The other
That makes
half's
sense.
unmarried because of the horse.
Yeah. The median age is 38 years of age. That also, the
Yeah,
things we've
median. Yeah,
seen, that
yeah,
makes sense.
yep.
Now we're looking at percentage of owners under 18, 12%, 18 to 24, 5%, 25 to 34 is 22%, 35 to 44 is 20%, 45 to 59 is 23%, and then
Yeah.
if you're 60 or older, it's 18%.
Well,
That looks
and
pretty
look at,
similar too.
yeah, and as you age and your income becomes better, more affordability.
Yep.
But again, some of those are how many horses do you have over your lifetime?
Yeah.
There's people
But
that I
again,
owned a horse once, too.
yeah,
And
also. But the biggest groups, 22%, 20 and 23% are 25 to
25 and
34,
above. Yeah.
35 to 44, 45 to 59. It tapers down a little bit when you're 60 and older. That
Right.
all makes sense. Again, middle of your life, you're starting to get a little bit more money. And then
Yep.
eventually, hey, maybe I like doing this, but my body can't keep up with it. So
Right.
it kind of drops down a little bit. That all makes sense to the customers we have seen, the clients that we have dealt with.
Well, and one thing that's kind of an anomaly for us and the breed is when you get a horse that's really smooth, a lot of people that have ceased riding,
Yep, good point.
what we call the post pounders, quarter horse, particularly Arabs, very rough riding, especially at a faster pace into the trot, for the speed. They get out of the horses because their back can't take it, and then they find out about gaited horses, not just walkers, but gaited horses, and they can ride them. And then you'll see an older population shift, or they get back into horses again, which is kind of neat. I mean, it's a really cool thing to have, but
Yeah,
that's kind of short lived because you're not stopping the aging process either.
right.
So
Before we move on to horse prices, I'll just say that the annual income, it makes sense as you go from 0 to 25,000 a year, 25,000 to 50,000, 50,000 to so it just makes sense as you get higher in income, the higher percentage and chance
yeah,
of owners.
it takes
Yeah.
money to fuel them.
Yep.
It's like a car, you got to feed the horses.
Yeah. The average price of a horse, this one makes sense to the things I've seen as well. Recreational horse price, that was part of the FAQ, $3,444 on average for a recreational horse. Okay. A show horse price, average $11,248. And then a racehorse price, again, some of the things I've seen in Kentucky, this makes sense. The average is $45,532.
Yeah.
Just shows you that if you
But you
get
got
in the
some,
racehorse market, you better have some cash in your pocket.
well, and you got a few horses at the top of that are, bringing a couple $1 million a piece that really
Yeah.
skew that average up.
Well, what's crazy too is you can have an unproven colt come from a high pedigree and they'll still sell for a couple $1 million
Right.
for
Right.
a yearling and stuff like that.
Right.
And those particular racehorse industry costs are according to the Keeneland racetrack, which is in Lexington. It says the leading racehorse industry's auction house, the average racehorse sales price are based on 1,045 horse sales in January 2022. The top price for that particular sale was $750,000 even, so $750,000.
Well, see, and that's a very credible source to cite because
Yes.
they're taking very specific and immaculate records on what they're doing, and that's a good share number for a particular sale.
Yeah, and again, I think that's one sale. That's just the January sale, so it's
that's what I thought. They said,
1,045 horses, and I think they sell twice, maybe 3 times a year.
Yeah.
But again, still you're looking at the top price being $750,000 for a racehorse. That's kind of cheap, guys. If you want to be making some big money wins, like getting up there that could potentially get you into the Kentucky Derby, that's pretty cheap.
Well, if it wins. If it doesn't win, you've spent a lot of money on a dud.
Yeah.
You bought a flat tire for a high
And
dollar.
here's and I'll say prices and costs for this one, but the other part of it being, again, relating it back to our in the shoot episode, the cost of having a horse in the United States. We'll just focus on recreational. We won't go into the show horse, but it says ownership cost in 2016 was $6,700. In 2021, it was $7,900. So a percent change of roughly 16%. Then you look at what the cost types are: board, feed, vet, farrier, training, and insurance. Your annual cost for board is probably going to be somewhere between $1,200 to $7,200. Feed is $250. That's really cheap. I don't know how you manage that. But
no.
It says $250 to $4,300. Vet is $200 to $350. That depends on the year. It could get really expensive.
Yeah, that feed is even a cheap pasture, at $30 a head over a year is $360, or almost $400 for just if you didn't feed them anything. So I'm
a little cheap there.
Yeah, horse
again. I think that's a little cheap too, because you still need to count wormer and shots and stuff. Right. And saying 200 to 350. Okay. Farrier $120 to $1,000. Okay. Training $4,800 to $8,400. Boy, do we have a sale for you.
Well,
we
what
come in
kind of
cheaper
training
than that
though?
for training.
Yeah, but they're, again, what are you doing? What are you wanting? And how much are you willing to pay for that horse to be trained
Yeah.
while it's being boarded. We see
Yeah.
that all the
Well,
time
that's a good
too
point.
with
Yeah,
trainers.
good point. And then insurance, it says 1,000 to 2,000 a year. The question is that 1,000 to 2,000 on the horse and the
Yeah,
horse's life,
probably.
or is that insurance for like you and you getting? That'd be interesting.
No, that's I'll bet that's for people buying horse insurance, which is extremely difficult to collect on.
Yeah, I
We've heard
believe that.
some vet telling me that he was, for instance, racehorse. These were quarter horse race horses, and he was the track vet. And a horse broke its leg. They had to put it down. He did it. They buried the horse. The folks had insurance on the horse, and the insurance would not pay. And they needed an affidavit from that vet of what happened, but would not accept his written affidavit. They had to dig the horse up. He had to inspect the horse, look at the had a broken leg, and bury it again before they would even pay. And then they only paid partially.
That's
So the
ridiculous.
horse insurance is, to me, it's kind of it's a rack.
Scam.
It's a scheme. Yeah. Good
The
luck.
Now that kind of brings up all the information that I had in this. I thought it was good for the most part, other than the holes we poked in it. But some of the references are American Horse Council, Data Paddock from American Horse Council, MUMA, Business Review, Equestrian Channel, statistics from the total employment, U.S. Broadcasting, total number of freight. So they used, it looks like Census and Bureau of Labor Statistics, Equus Magazine, Equivant, Equestrian Market Research Report, University of Maine, American Quarter Horse Association, Keeneland. Again, we talked about that. Swing and D Horse Rescue. So there's some horse rescue stuff in here. We called it. Arabian Horse Association. So it looks like they did a pretty good job. They've got 33 cited sources, and that doesn't mean they didn't pull some information from other places, but definite stuff that they got was 33 separate things in here. So that, I mean, at least they did their homework and they showed it. So I much appreciate to that, to the, what is it? The horsesonly.com. So
yeah. Good. That's all right.
But yeah, that's horses costs, the horse industry, and where we may or may not fit into it, I guess.
And at this point in the last year, horse prices have skyrocketed here,
which is crazy.
Yeah, which is crazy. But I think it's people. We've got a big influx of people coming in, out of state, from out of state. They're selling high dollar homes. They get their dream place of, hey, I've got 5 acres, I want a horse, and they over purchase their property. They're going to over purchase their price, and there's always people saying, "You want my horse for? Let's see, $1 billion." And they go, okay. And so, I mean, it's gone crazy. It's not sustainable, but
no,
people are enjoying the ride while they can.
Well, just like the housing market, maybe the horse market will bust here pretty soon.
It will. It always does. Up and down. That's the way it is.
Mom said next year we should have 5 equine partners. One of them is not for sale, but there should be 4 potentially that'll be on the ground next year.
Maybe. Well, yeah. That's what we've got scheduled is for this year, for this coming
knock
year.
on wood, hopefully.
Yep. Yeah.
So with that, I'll hand it to you. That's it.
Wow. A lot of dollars spent on horses. Not a lot of dollars spent on you, because all you get is a thank you till you're better paid.